The gloves are finally off, and the British monarchy is taking a step no one ever expected. For years, the royal motto stood firm: never complain, never explain. But by late 2025, that long-standing rule was completely abandoned. If you assumed the tension between the palace and the Sussexes was just a private family disagreement, you were mistaken. It has now escalated into a full-blown institutional conflict, with Prince William leading from the front. This is no longer about bruised emotions. It's about the very survival of the crown. A wave of secret memos, leaked letters, and high-stakes legal actions has reshaped everything, and the revelations emerging from London are more startling than anything we've seen before. It all began with a leak that sent shockwaves through Windsor. Imagine a trove of private correspondence dating back to some of the most difficult years for the royal family suddenly exposed to the public. These weren't casual exchanges. They outlined a strategic blueprint attributed to the Duchess of Sussex between 2021 and 2023. The messages reportedly included direct allegations against King Charles, portraying him as emotionally distant during a time when support was most needed. But one particular line captured the attention of palace officials and reportedly changed William's perspective on his brother forever. The Duchess allegedly wrote, "If Charles will not protect me, then the narrative will." That single sentence shifted everything. To the palace, this wasn't just emotional venting. It signaled a deliberate media strategy, one that used personal experiences as leverage against the institution. Within a monarchy that has existed for centuries, reputation is everything. It's the only true currency. And if that currency is being deliberately undermined to elevate a personal brand elsewhere, it stops being a family disagreement and becomes a structural threat. That realization hit senior royals hard. They weren't simply facing a difficult relative. They were up against a highly organized, well-funded media operation targeting the very core of the monarchy. But that was only part of the picture. While the public remained focused on headlines and speculation, a far more calculated response was being developed behind closed doors at Clarence House. King Charles, dealing with his own health challenges and recognizing that quiet endurance was no longer effective, made a decisive move. He approved what insiders referred to as Memo 2485, known within royal circles as the Fall Mandate. This confidential directive introduced something entirely unprecedented. It transferred full authority over all matters related to the Sussexes to the Prince and Princess of Wales. No more committees. No more cautious PR strategies. William was now effectively in command of the entire situation. This marked a significant shift in royal protocol. Traditionally, such family conflicts would be handled by the reigning monarch. But Charles understood that a more energetic and direct approach was needed. By granting William this level of control, he was sending a clear message: the future king would not take a passive stance. Under Memo 2485, William became the sole voice authorized to represent the family regarding Harry and Meghan. The objective was clear: present a unified front. No more conflicting leaks to the press. No more mixed messaging. It would be one voice, one narrative, and one direction moving forward. And much of that direction, it seems, was being shaped by the Princess of Wales. Behind the scenes, Catherine was doing far more than recovering. She was strategically involved. While public attention remained on her health, she was reportedly helping craft the broader media approach. She understood that the monarchy's strength lies in its image as a symbol of duty and service, and anything that threatened that image had to be addressed. This new approach wasn't just about communication. It came with real consequences. It included legal frameworks for suspending privileges and formal procedures that could be activated instantly if further attacks emerged from California. The era of silence was over. The monarchy was preparing to respond. But what followed next surprised everyone. Before unveiling this new, firm stance publicly, William reportedly made one final attempt to reach out to his brother. In early October 2025, the two princes had a private phone conversation. William wasn't seeking an apology. He wanted clarity. Specifically, he asked for corrections regarding what he described as harmful statements made about Catherine. He wanted the truth about how Meghan had been treated to be made public. Harry's response, however, marked a turning point. He reportedly told William that altering the narrative now would cost him everything he had built in his new life. For William, that was the moment of final realization. His brother, he felt, had chosen his public identity over family ties. An aide close to William later remarked that the prince no longer felt obligated to defend his brother. His priority had shifted entirely to protecting the institution. This wasn't driven by emotion, but by necessity. William understood that the Sussex brand was deeply tied to royal controversy, and as long as that connection remained, the conflict would continue. So he made a decision to create distance, not just physically, but legally and symbolically, a boundary that could not be crossed. And he chose to introduce this new reality in a place the world's media couldn't ignore, Kensington Palace. This time, William didn't rely on a spokesperson. He appeared in person, standing in the picture gallery of Kensington Palace, facing the cameras directly. He stood calm, precise, and unmistakably sharp. There was no trace of the traditional royal softness in his words. Instead, he delivered a direct statement. No one in this family has harassed Mrs. Markle, nor has anyone favored my wife at her expense. It was a clear and deliberate rejection of the accusations. He went even further, stating that the current situation was the result of Meghan's own choices and her ongoing attempts to weaken the institution's credibility. This wasn't just a response. It was a calculated display meant to shift the narrative. And William didn't rely on statements alone. He introduced evidence. He referenced coordinated media activity and paid placements in American outlets aimed at damaging Catherine's public image. According to him, the palace had been monitoring these patterns for months, tracking the PR agencies involved and analyzing how sponsored content and algorithm-driven amplification were being used to overshadow royal duties. By redefining these attacks as commercially driven content rather than independent journalism, William created grounds for a new type of response, legal intervention. This was no longer about a personal disagreement. In his framing, it had become a confrontation with a structured, corporate-backed entity. His next move brought an unexpected name into the spotlight, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. In a development that surprised even experienced royal commentators, William suggested that Meghan had attempted to leverage Sarah's complicated history with the family to create internal divisions. He also claimed that pressure had been applied on Catherine during her cancer treatment. William described these actions as deeply unacceptable. By exposing this alleged strategy, he effectively removed Sarah Ferguson as a potential influence and sent a broader signal across the royal circle. Loyalty was no longer optional. It was expected. Then came one of the most striking comparisons. William emphasized that accountability within the institution applies equally to all, and he specifically referenced Prince Andrew. By placing Meghan in the same framework as one of the most controversial figures in modern royal history, he indicated that similar consequences could follow. Andrew lost his titles, roles, and public standing, and William made it clear that a comparable outcome was possible here. This wasn't framed as a personal attack. It was positioned as a matter of institutional standards. The entire issue, he argued, was about maintaining accountability, not settling family disputes. From that point forward, a new approach was established: strategic silence. William made it clear that he would no longer respond to Hollywood commentary or media narratives involving the Duke of Sussex. The intention was simple: remove the reaction that fuels the story. If the Sussexes chose to continue sharing their version, they could, but without a royal response, the impact would diminish. Palace advisors believed that without ongoing engagement, public interest in the narrative would gradually fade. They were counting on the audience, eventually growing tired of the constant back and forth. However, the most delicate aspect of this entire shift involved the children, Archie and Lilibet. In a rare moment, William addressed them directly, expressing concern. He stated that they deserve a stable upbringing, free from public tension. While officials quickly clarified that this was not a legal threat regarding custody, the underlying message was unmistakable. The institution was paying attention to how the children were being presented publicly. By positioning the working royals as defenders of the children's privacy, William raised the social and political cost of continued media exposure. It reframed the conversation entirely. Public reaction in the UK was immediate and largely supportive. Surveys indicated that more than 70% of the British public backed William's firmer stance. Many viewed him as a decisive leader protecting the monarchy. In contrast, reactions in the United States were far more divided. Some criticized it as an overreach by an outdated institution, while others saw it as a justified response to a celebrity-driven narrative. This difference in perception across the Atlantic is something the palace is now actively navigating. They understand that while they may lose influence in Hollywood, their primary goal is preserving the institution itself. As the impact of William's speech settled, the most serious measure was quietly prepared: Order W-17. This wasn't just another internal document. It was a formal move toward the Privy Council, seeking to remove the Sussexes of their remaining royal titles. The gravity of this action echoes the level of the 1936 abdication crisis. If fully implemented, Order W-17 would represent a complete constitutional break. British diplomatic missions worldwide would no longer recognize Harry or Meghan as representatives of the Crown. Their access to royal residences would be permanently withdrawn, and their names would be erased from official ceremonial records. The legal complexity of such a move is immense. Palace legal teams are reportedly working continuously, reviewing constitutional frameworks, letters patent, and administrative law to ensure the process holds up under scrutiny. Their aim is to avoid any form of public trial or investigation. Instead, they want a controlled and procedural separation, quiet but definitive. It may seem like a harsh resolution, but from the palace's perspective, it is a necessary step to safeguard the monarchy's future. Throughout this entire period, the Princess of Wales has maintained a steady and composed presence. Just days after the peak of the controversy, she appeared at a pediatric oncology center, dressed simply and wearing an anchor-shaped brooch, widely interpreted as a symbol of resilience. Observers saw it as a subtle but powerful message. While the Sussexes continued their media presence from California, Catherine remained focused on her duties. The contrast was clear, and the palace leaned into it, presenting one side as committed to service and the other as centered on controversy. The events of 2025 are not just another chapter in a royal dispute. They mark a defining moment, one that could reshape the monarchy for years to come. The monarchy has now shifted from quiet endurance to active control. Under William and Catherine's leadership, the institution has redrawn its limits. They've made it clear that even in a modern era, no royal stands above the rules of the crown. Whether this Wales-led approach will prove effective over time is still uncertain. But one thing is undeniable: the age of the soft monarchy has come to an end. This new strategy, built on transparency, legal structure, and direct response, is a calculated risk. It brings internal tensions into public view, but at the same time, it gives the monarchy something it hasn't had in years: control over its own narrative. As King Charles continues to focus on his health, the public is essentially witnessing the early stages of King William's future reign before it officially begins. And if recent months are anything to go by, that reign will be marked by firmness, accountability, and a clear refusal to allow the crown to be undermined again. But the Wales Protocol goes far beyond public appearances and legal documents. Its real foundation was laid behind closed doors, specifically during a high-level emergency meeting at Windsor Castle. Picture a room filled with some of the most influential figures in Britain, not elected officials, but senior legal advisors and intelligence risk analysts. The meeting, led by Lady Fiona Walsingham, was anything but routine. This wasn't a discussion, it was a strategic command center. The focus wasn't just public opinion, it was the long-term survival of the monarchy in a digital era. The realization was stark. In the modern world, a narrative can be just as destabilizing as a political uprising. And with that understanding, they made a critical decision to treat the Sussex media operation not as personal expression, but as a coordinated corporate force. From that moment, a large-scale effort began to trace every media link connected to the Sussexes. What once looked like scattered gossip was now being analyzed as a structured pattern of influence. Sponsored content and native advertising in American outlets were no longer dismissed. They were categorized as part of a broader, organized threat. So when William addressed the world from Kensington Palace, he wasn't speaking as an individual. He was representing an institution that had done its groundwork. He had data, timelines, and a legal strategy built not for headlines, but for courtrooms. The response from California followed quickly, and exactly as many had anticipated. Within 3 days of William's statement, the Montecito team initiated what analysts described as a 3-stage crisis response. The first phase leaned into a familiar approach, the victim narrative. Stories began surfacing in major U.S. publications describing Meghan as marginalized and emotionally mistreated. But this time, the palace broke with tradition. Instead of remaining silent, they issued a firm and immediate denial, signaling that they would no longer allow commercially driven narratives to circulate without challenge. In effect, they reframed the victim narrative as a strategic business move, and it caught the Sussex PR team off guard. The second phase revealed even more. The focus shifted toward empowerment and reinvention. Headlines began highlighting health ventures, children's literature, and documentary projects centered around generational trauma. It was a deliberate repositioning from a figure of grievance to a figure of influence. However, this is where the palace's updated strategy had its impact. By systematically distancing the Sussexes from the royal brand through administrative actions, they weakened the foundation of that new narrative. Without an active royal identity, the emotional weight behind those stories began to lose its commercial appeal. In essence, the palace was reducing the value of the Sussex brand in real time. Then there's the divide in global perception. While much of the UK public supported William's firm stance, reactions across the United States and parts of the Commonwealth were far more mixed. In American culture, themes of independence and personal truth resonate strongly, leading some to view the palace's actions as overly controlling. But the Wales Protocol had already accounted for this contrast. The goal was never to win favor in Hollywood. It was to preserve constitutional stability at home. The strategy rests on a long-term assumption that global audiences will eventually tire of ongoing controversy. And when that happens, the steady, duty-focused image of the working royals will remain as the lasting impression. The legal dimension of Order W17 may be the most compelling and unsettling aspect of this entire situation. Removing a royal title isn't as straightforward as updating official records. It requires letters patent, the withdrawal of honorary roles, and an intricate examination of constitutional law. Some experts are already describing this as the most consequential legal divide since the abdication crisis of 1936. But unlike that moment, When a king chose love over duty, this time it's the crown choosing preservation over a prince. Legal teams are now faced with an unprecedented challenge, determining how diplomatic and constitutional protocols apply to individuals who remain royal by blood, yet have been effectively removed through administrative action. It's a gray area in law, uncharted territory that may take years to fully untangle. Amid all of this, Catherine's role has risen to an extraordinary level, one that some believe even Queen Elizabeth II might have admired. During a reported internal inquiry, a moment stood out that left senior officials stunned. Catherine is said to have remarked, "I forgive her, but I will not accept her suffering as my responsibility." That statement has come to represent the philosophy of this new era, balancing compassion with firm institutional boundaries. She isn't casting herself as an antagonist, but she is no longer willing to be placed in a position of quiet endurance. By consistently focusing on her charitable work and maintaining a composed public image, she has emerged as the moral center of the monarchy. While the Sussexes continue to engage with media narratives, Catherine is shaping a legacy built on consistency and service. The stakes at this point couldn't be higher. If William and Catherine succeed, they will have effectively modernized the monarchy, transforming it from a family-centered structure into a resilient institution capable of defending itself in a rapidly changing world. If they fall short, the risk is just as significant. The royal family could be reduced to little more than ongoing public spectacle, losing the sense of mystique and dignity that has sustained it for centuries. But judging by the firm and deliberate stance emerging from Kensington Palace, their direction is already set. They are no longer pursuing quiet reconciliation or behind-the-scenes diplomacy. Instead, they've embraced openness, responsibility, and a clear public boundary. The message couldn't be more direct. The crown is no longer just a symbol of tradition. It is an institution that understands its power and, more importantly, knows how to defend it.